Ridley Scott's 34-year-old crime thriller is still flawless from beginning to end, and it features Brad Pitt's breakout performance. Very few Hollywood names have maintained their relevance quite like Sir Ridley Scott. At 87 years old, Scott is still pumping out films at an incredible pace and keeping up with the times to boot. Assuming he doesn't hang up the boots, Scott will officially have been making films for half a century by 2027, and if it were up to fans, he would make them for a full 100. With 5 decades of filmmaking and counting under his belt, there are countless superb Scott showings to choose from as his best. From his breakout films, like The Duelist and Alien, to mid-career masterpieces, like American Gangster and The Martian, all the way to controversial recent releases like House of Gucci and Gladiator II. Far and away standing above even the iconic franchise entries of Scott's catalog, however, is Thelma and Louise, an eternally relevant crime thriller that deserved to sweep the Academy Awards and more. Thelma and Louise is perfect from cast to crew and tip to tail, and it truly has to be seen to be believed. What is Thelma and Louise? Thelma and Louise is a 1991 film directed by Ridley Scott at the peak of his powers. Before this film, Scott primarily concerned himself with fantasy, horror, or sci-fi spectacles, so a fairly standard road film didn't seem to fit into his career path. What fans thought to be a standard road film, however, actually turned out to be something far greater, as Scott and screenwriter Callie Cowrie combined to make a truly unforgettable final product. While writing the screenplay, Callie Cowrie envisioned Holly Hunter as Thelma and Frances McDormand as Louise. The film primarily follows 2 titular friends, Thelma, a highly repressed housewife, and Louise, a far too confident and fast-talking waitress. Without the permission of Thelma's incredibly controlling husband, the duo embarks on a weekend road trip. Their first stop on the road trip is a roadside bar where Thelma meets, flirts, and dances with Harlan. Later on, when Thelma starts feeling sick, Harlan takes her outside and tries to rape her, which leads to Louise intervening and killing Harlan. What begins as a stress-relief getaway quickly turns into an on-the-run caper, as Thelma and Louise evade controlling husbands, would-be boyfriends, dedicated cops, and charming drifters. Throughout the runtime, the film slowly morphs from a crime thriller to an emotional journey, as the bond of the 2 leading ladies grows, evolves, and expands. The film primarily follows 2 titular friends, Thelma, a highly repressed housewife, and Louise, a far too confident and fast-talking waitress. Without the permission of Thelma's incredibly controlling husband, the duo embarks on a weekend road trip. Their first stop on the road trip is a roadside bar where Thelma meets, flirts, and dances with Harlan. Later on, when Thelma starts feeling sick, Harlan takes her outside and tries to rape her, which leads to Louise intervening and killing Harlan. What begins as a stress-relief getaway quickly turns into an on-the-run caper, as Thelma and Louise evade controlling husbands, would-be boyfriends, dedicated cops, and charming drifters. Throughout the runtime, the film slowly morphs from a crime thriller to an emotional journey, as the bond of the 2 leading ladies grows, evolves, and expands. The film primarily follows 2 titular friends, Thelma, a highly repressed housewife, and Louise, a far too confident and fast-talking waitress. Without the permission of Thelma's incredibly controlling husband, the duo embarks on a weekend road trip. Their first stop on the road trip is a roadside bar where Thelma meets, flirts, and dances with Harlan. Later on, when Thelma starts feeling sick, Harlan takes her outside and tries to rape her, which leads to Louise intervening and killing Harlan. What begins as a stress-relief getaway quickly turns into an on-the-run caper, as Thelma and Louise evade controlling husbands, would-be boyfriends, dedicated cops, and charming drifters. Throughout the runtime, the film slowly morphs from a crime thriller to an emotional journey, as the bond of the 2 leading ladies grows, evolves, and expands. With a stellar cast, crew, and red-hot director at the helm, Thelma and Louise's success was never in doubt. Everyone and their mother raved about the film, with a feminist subtext and allegorical queer material surprisingly not presenting a roadblock, which other similarly themed films of the era encountered. Contemporary critics and outright legends like Roger Ebert praised the film and almost gave it a perfect full-force rating, saying, "Thelma and Louise is in the expansive, visionary tradition of the American road picture. It celebrates the myth of 2 carefree souls piling into a 1956 T-Bird and driving out of town to have some fun and raise some hell." Ebert is right and presents an interesting point. The American road film is a small, exclusive, and storied genre, and Ridley Scott's film incredibly managed to slot in without any trouble. The film mixes thrilling adventure with heart-stopping crime and gut-busting comedy, all while delivering a concise and evergreen emotional arc. This atonal quality is reflected in the film's modern critical reception. As of July 2025, Thelma and Louise has a certified fresh score of 86% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes and an 82% rating from audiences. All over the internet, praise for Thelma and Louise pops up, and it's easy to see why. The film's legacy continues to this day in so many different ways. Thelma and Louise is routinely named to Best Films of the 1990s list, has been honored by the American Film Institute on multiple occasions, and was listed by the Writers Guild of America as the 72nd best screenplay of all time. Most films with a legacy this enduring have suffered through the ringer of remakes, reboots, and sequels, but Thelma and Louise has strangely escaped it for the most part. It isn't for a lack of trying from the Hollywood vultures, though, as the idea has been floating around the Hollywood sphere for years now. Those involved with the 1991 original aren't having any of it. Gina Davis once shared with IndieWire that the idea of a sequel repulses her, saying, "Well, it must never be remade. I mean, it's 30-something years later, and it holds up more than others. I'm not saying this because I'm in it, but it really holds up, and there's no need to revisit it. What would be the point? In my opinion." Thankfully for fans, and clearly for those involved in the making, a Thelma and Louise remake has never quite gotten off the ground. The only spin-off of any sort to come from Thelma and Louise is a musical stage adaptation, which seemed misguided to fans at first, but has been highly anticipated ever since original screenwriter Callie Cowrie was announced to return. Thelma and Louise was Brad Pitt's breakout, and he maybe deserve an Academy Award. When a Hollywood actor gains momentum, the only thing they can be compared to is a runaway train. They can go from complete obscurity to being plastered on every single movie marquee imaginable. Some recent examples of this include the Fantastic Four's Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn, Paul Mescal, and Margaret Qualley, all of whom seemingly went from the occasional TV show or indie film to the very top of the Hollywood mountain. For most actors, it's easy to pin down the singular project that catapulted them to success. For Pedro Pascal, it was The Last of Us. For Joseph,